This is the digestive talk. I hope you'll stay with me. If you fall asleep, please don't snore. If you can turn off your sound on your mobile phone and other noisy devices, that would be very much appreciated. And we'll jump right into crowdfunding your video game in 2019. My name is Thomas Bidot. I'm French. I've been in the game industry for a while. I'm a video game consultant. I consult on a variety of topics related usually to video game publishing. I work a lot on free-to-play, PC, and console game, these sort of things. But I also have a crowdfunding addiction. I really like crowdfunding. I'm back to this date, 279 projects on Kickstarter and a few others on other platforms. But also, being in the game industry, trying to make my addiction something useful, I also work with people with a crowdfunding campaign. I started with looking at data because people were not looking at data for crowdfunding, they were looking at the big projects. So I started to do like data mining on Kickstarter, able to provide like a 10,000 feet view on the crowdfunding state for video games. And by providing data, I started to look at best practices. People brought me on their project. I've advised about 40 campaigns, most of them video games. And I've worked directly into 5 campaigns, 4 of them on Kickstarter, 1 of them on Ulule. And I've been running workshops helping developers and creators to basically try to make their crowdfunding campaign as successful as possible. This talk has 4 parts. There's the first one is going to be the state of play, how is crowdfunding right now. There's then a part on what kind of projects are right for crowdfunding and try to help you, establish whether or not a crowdfunding project is what a crowdfunding campaign is right for your project. I'll talk about choosing your platform. Should be relatively brief, and then I'll talk about best practices. And before we go into the state of play, so I love numbers. I try to spend not too much time on numbers. I try to show like snapshots and give you a sense of where we're at. Sorry. And I'm not going to see much of your hands, but if you can try to raise your hands, who has run a Kickstarter campaign before, a crowdfunding campaign before, who wants to do something on crowdfunding? Yeah, that's why you're here. Good. Who's not sure is coming here to get an answer whether or not they should do it? Okay, a few people. Excellent, excellent. Who has never backed? Who's never backed a Kickstarter campaign or any crowdfunding of any sort? Good. Shame on you. So, numbers. I said numbers. Yeah. So this data is us crawling Kickstarter every day, trying to see which projects work. This is all about video games. Kickstarter is very useful to understand the state of play for crowdfunding because this is the biggest crowdfunding platform. This is not the only one. We'll talk about a couple of those later. But it's a very much, there's so many of the crowdfunding for video game that happens on Kickstarter that it might as well be all of it here. It gives you a sense of the numbers. So last year, there was about $15 million that was going through project that was successfully funded on Kickstarter. That's a little bit less than the year before, and a little bit less than the year before again. It's significantly less than 2015. These numbers are what they are. There's 15 million is 15 million. It's a good amount of money, but it's not comparable to the vast amount of money like big publishers or the industry is putting into video games. But this is still money that comes with a few strings attached, comes with the community, and tend to have lots of added value to them. What's more interesting as well is to look at the number of projects that get funded every year. And if you look at back to 2011, before Double Fine Adventure kind of like rocked the crowdfunding boat, there's been about between 350 to 400 projects a year that got funded on Kickstarter. And what's interesting is that number has not dropped significantly. We still are about like a project a day, a video game project a day gets funded on Kickstarter. What's also very interesting is to look at the number of total projects that are submitted on the platform. The number of projects that fail is actually going down. Quick anecdote, 2014, there's a project called Potato Salad that launched on Kickstarter. And that's the reason there's a big spike in low-quality projects that went there. So that's this potato salad effect you're seeing at play here with the huge increase of projects that don't get funded. Now we are back about the same ratio we were in 2013 before potato salad. So we are probably more like the natural state that crowdfunding should be for that. So a project today, you probably don't know most of them. That means that there's a lot of projects that are below the radar that actually get funded on Kickstarter every year. And last slide on Kickstarter purely, this is about the size of the project that got funded last year and the year before. So there were about like 5 projects last year that raised more than $500,000. There was like 25 projects that raised between $100,000 and $500,000. And like 179 projects raised less than $10,000. Again, this is, I think, useful for anyone who kind of like try to understand, oh, Kickstarter, you will do $1 million easy, or you can't do more than $10,000 on Kickstarter. These are the numbers. This is the number of projects every year, video games that get funded and how much money they raised. So depending on what your expectation, this might be like very distressing. It might be very good. I don't know. But this is a tool for you to use to understand where you sit in terms of expectation on how much money you can raise. I want to talk very briefly about Fig as a crowdfunding platform that's dedicated to video game. I think it's interesting to see how much they performed in the past few years. The first 2 years of Fig, they raised a significant amount of money, north of 5 million both years. Last year was a low year for Fig. There was less than $500,000 total across 6 projects that got funded. So Fig is still a small platform in comparison to Kickstarter for what video games are. Enough numbers. Let's talk about the serious stuff. Is your game good for crowdfunding? And there's something you need to understand about crowdfunding is that it's all about love. And it's such an important notion. You need love to be successful in crowdfunding. You need people to love your project. Before I go a bit more into that, there's also a few projects that, even with all the love in the world, you probably won't be able to crowdfund them. So these are my red flags of any project that I immediately will say, you're probably not going to make it. And if you get the answer you wanted in those like 3 slides and want to leave, I won't take it personally. It's all good. So games for kids. People don't back games for kids because the time you get between getting the money and delivering the product, the kid has grown, changed his taste. So people don't back games for kids. Free-to-play games. People don't buy free-to-play games. Free-to-play is the antithesis of crowdfunding. You play the game first, and then you decide if you spend money on it because you played when it was free. Trying to get people to spend money on a free-to-play game before it's even out is very, very counterintuitive. And the last category is mobile games. This is a bit more complex. I could go into more details about that, but mobile games are very difficult to crowdfund. The average pledge per backer is very low on mobile, makes it more difficult to raise the amount required. The distribution is very complicated. And just the psychology of people, they tend to back things that they feel is important, and something that's on a small screen, people feel like is less important, so it's more difficult to convince them to back a mobile project. So it's kind of like that the 3 categories of games that you probably should not do on crowdfunding, and guess what goes. There's a last thing. If there's no love in your game, and by that, it's not bad. You can have a game that's very good, but nobody loves. Nobody has a passion for it. Nobody's kind of like driven by, that game is good. I want it to happen. If you don't have love, you will fail. You need people who actually have an emotional connection to your game that they want to see exist for a crowdfunding campaign to succeed. So there's lots of different ways to look at your game. Is it loveless? What's more important is like, do you have people who know about your game? And the people who know about your game, how they feel about it. Feel keen, interested, curious, or really excited? You want that last category. And that's all kind of like the green flags, the things that you want to have. An existing community that's incredibly attached to your property. How many people in the room know about Critical Role? Okay, good. You should all check out Critical Role. It's a D&D show. They've done a Kickstarter campaign. They have like a month left. They've already raised $7.6 million. They have 56,000 backers. And the rewards, if you look at the details, there's not much in the rewards, and people have backed the hell out of it. The average pledge per backer is $130, and there's pledges that do $25,000, and every pledge that's limited, that's more than $1,000, they're all sold out. They've all been taken. They have a lot of love. People are passionate about it. There's lots of Tumblr about it as well, which is good. It's also easier if your project has kind of like a drive behind it. Like, I want that to happen. Whether it's because it's so stupid it needs to happen, or it's missing. I want like a point and click in the old style of, Day of the Tentacle and Magnet Mansion. I want that game because nobody else is going to do. It's kind of like a drive. So if this is present, you tick another box, like you're probably going to be in the right side of crowdfunding-friendly campaign. And then you need something that's communicable. You need something that's easy to understand and people to share, understand why there's a passion about it. So yes, you have an existing community, people love your project, but for them to be able to recruit, they need to be able to bring people to you. I like Superhot. Superhot is a category of game that should not work on Kickstarter. It's a first-person shooter. First-person shooters, there's tons of them. Why would I back a Kickstarter about a first-person shooter when I can go to any store and buy, the latest iteration of one of the big franchises? But Superhot has a unique art style and a unique concept of, the time moves when you move, and nobody's done that. And that's so easy to explain. I just explained it in a sentence. It's easy to demonstrate, just a couple of GIF, and then suddenly you understand the action. On top of that, when Superhot launched their Kickstarter, they had their prototype from the Game Jam where the game was initially conceived. And they just shared that. And just like, if you don't get it, just play it. You're like, oh my God, I understand it immediately. That makes it very strong for a crowdfunding campaign. It makes it more easy to be viral, more easy for people to recruit their friends to support you because they love it and they want more people to support it. So if you're all into the categories, or if you think you can get into these categories, good. I want to talk about a few projects from last year as well, and then to explain a bit more what is a good project for crowdfunding. So The Good Life is a project I worked on, and that raised a bit more than $700,000, and it had a unique art style, and it tried to do something innovative into the RPG genre. There's no combat. It's all about taking pictures and solving quests by, spying on people maybe, but at least you don't shed blood, and there's murder mystery, and then you turn into a cat at night. Like, it's a bit bonkers. It's a bit unique. People also have an emotional relationship with the games made by Swery. The creator has a kind of like a unique style. He has a fan base. People care about that. But for the campaign to be successful, we had to show the game. Midway through the campaign, we were at GDC a year ago, and things had slowed down, which always happen in a Kickstarter campaign. And we are like, OK, what can we do to basically give it a bit more life? And it was very difficult to convince the studio to share the demo they had. They had a little playable demo with like 3 quests they were using for press demos. And they were like, no, it's very, very bad. It's ugly. It's buggy. We don't want to share with anyone. And so after long discussions, like, if we want the campaign to succeed, we need to share the game. We need to give it to people into their hands. And so we did it. And then nobody complained about the quality. Everybody's like, it's exactly what I expected. It's quirky. It's funny. I understand the gameplay about taking the pictures and all that. And people streamed it. People shared it. And it was a second life into that campaign. It really made it work. And so that was a very important component to actually sometime you let it out and share what it is you are building, because otherwise people will not be able to follow you through the campaign and the promises. Another campaign I want to talk about is Iron Harvest. Iron Harvest did $1.3 million last year. It's one of the big campaigns from last year. And it's a niche game. It's a real-time strategy. We're talking about the drive of people to support the campaign. There's not that many real-time strategy games around at the moment. So actually doing an RTS is immediately going to attract the attention of RTS fans. And then they also choose to partner with a Polish concept artist that's very popular, that did the art direction for Scythe, a board game that was also very popular. unique style, unique visuals, unique universe. It kind of like increases, they multiply that attraction that you have for the project. Not only it's an RTS, and I wanted to do RTS for a long time, but on top of that, it's kind of like its own universe, it has its own like world that's very attractive. Good, that works. Top of that, don't ignore that. They did 1.3 million. It's their 4th Kickstarter campaign. They understood really well the environment. They understood really well their base. But it's also mean that you can do repeat Kickstarters and be successful. You don't have just to do one and then never do it again. Actually, it's a tool that you can repeat and get better at. Omno is a campaign from last year as well. They did almost 100,000 euros. Omno's success is very much the success of the single developer behind it. It's a solo dev, and he is a former animator, and he's very good at animation. He did a lot of prep work on the campaign where he shared his GIF of the game on Twitter, showing people, all the things you can do into the game, and the animation was really sleek, so the GIF were really sleek, and people were really intrigued. But there's also a story. People know that the developer is alone. So like literally alone making that game with a couple of freelancers for music or a few extra things. And he told a story. He didn't say like, I'm a studio making a game. He says, I'm a person alone trying to make that game, and I try to make it good, and any money I get, I can make more time, I can get some help from third parties, and the game can get better. And story is important because you create an emotional connection, love. The love on Omno is as much as love for the project than the kind of like support, like the crush you have on that developer that kind of trying to tackle making a game on its own, and we all know how hard it is. So I want to talk about a little intermission on timing. 2012, Kickstarter explodes. Everybody does like a Kickstarter campaign, and they all work very well. But we're in 2019. And over time, for the past 7 years, people's expectations on Kickstarter campaigns have changed. The excitement you have of, oh, we can bypass the publishers and give power to the devs and make them very creative, is also like, okay, well, maybe we want to see more of your game to understand what you are backing. And so we've seen like when a game is ready for crowdfunding campaign, kind of like move towards closer and closer to production, end of production. And in 2019, we are very much like you need to be able to show a vertical slice of the game. You need to show the art direction. You need to show something that looks like the final game. You can fake it, but the closer you are to what is your real vision, the further away you are in your production, the easier it will be. Also means that Kickstarter is not really good for the start of a project anymore. But it's still, an excellent tool to leverage an existing fan base, get more funding into a project. But it also means that the biggest competitor for Kickstarter on crowdfunding is not the other platforms, it's early access. And we're talking about what kind of type of project are good for crowdfunding. And what happens is that if you have a game that by the time you have a vertical slice, and maybe you have a short gameplay loop because it's a very mechanic-driven game, maybe you are ready for early access. And then a lot of people, rather than go to crowdfunding, go to early access and like, why would I, spend so much time into building like, rewards and presenting the campaign and recruit people to back my game, and I have that 30 days of anxiety when I'm trying to run the Kickstarter. Let's launch on Steam on early access. And that's fine. I think that's, if you have a project that's of that kind, maybe go to early access. But it also means that a certain projects that are not good for early access are the ones that also go back to Kickstarter. Anything that you can spoil will more likely go to a crowdfunding campaign. Like you have a story and you don't want to do early access because then you spoil the story. Well, maybe you present that story, the concept of it on Kickstarter, and that's where you raise the money you need to finish the project. Good. Where do we launch our crowdfunding campaign? That's going to be quick because there's not that many platforms, but I'll review quickly what I recommend to people in terms of platform where to launch their crowdfunding campaign. So if you think that the idea of asking money from people for something that doesn't exist yet and them not getting any money back Fig is for you because, revenue share. They get something back from their investment. Some of them. Some just do like, pre-order the game. That's the one reason to go on Fig, I think. If you have a huge audience in France, you should go to Ulule. You're laughing, but there's some people who made $1.4 million on that platform for a video game, and you've never heard of it. So some platforms are really good for your very ultra-local campaign. Most of you are not concerned about that. If Kickstarter is not available in your country, Indiegogo is not a bad platform to go to. It's more accessible than Kickstarter. That's limited to certain countries. But if you can, Kickstarter. And it's not about, Kickstarter is never going to do anything for you in terms of making you successful. I'm not talking the individual behind Kickstarter. Like Luke and Anya from the game team, they will love you, they will help you as much as they can. But the platform itself, the nature of it, there's no discoverability. This is the discoverability track. There's no discoverability in crowdfunding. The people you bring by yourself. They can help, maybe put you on the newsletter, project we love, maybe you get some organic traffic. But 90% of the backers, they are your backers you bring to the platform. And in that sense, you could bring them to any platform. But the strength of Kickstarter is there's less friction. People know the name. The number of people who tell me, Thomas, we want to do a Kickstarter campaign on Indiegogo. Because in their head, Kickstarter campaign means crowdfunding campaign. It becomes like, it's like Googling something on Bing. There's less friction. People already have accounts. People have already credit cards. It's just easier. People understand the code. So that's what makes Kickstarter the best platform for crowdfunding. If you can get more support, excellent. But don't be naive in thinking that I'll launch it on Kickstarter and then magic happens. People find my game and we get funded. That never happens. I'm very optimistic and nice, right? Killer of dreams. Best practices. So that's the last bit. This is where I give you advice on what makes your practical advice to make your campaign successful. So it's not about likes, it's about love. Anything you can do to induce love on your specific project, do it. So that kind of like a spectrum. On one end, you have like Iron Harvest, super hardcore military RTS. On the other end of my spectrum, I have Boyfriend Dungeon, like quirky dating sim, mixing Diablo, dungeon crawling, wacky things. You don't do the same thing to induce love into two different audiences. Boyfriend Dungeon, you show like, oh, here's a body pillow, here's like the new weapon, and here's the personality of the people you're going to date, and here's the wacky thing we want to do. On Iron Harvest end of the spectrum, you say, oh, we're going to do multiplayer, and this is the kind of units we want to have, and this is the different factions we have, and go more into like a nerdy, geeky stuff, and to paramilitary, fantasy armies, and all that kind of stuff. But that's the kind of stuff you need to push to your audience to like, what is it going to tell them that make them love your product? And it's not like a USP thing. It's going to be like images, it's going to be like lore, it's going to be like little details like that you can put into that make them care more about your project. It could be also you, it could be your team. Hey, we are 5, 10, 20. Here's the people behind. Maybe that makes them love you more because it's more human. The momentum is incredibly important. Incredibly important. If you don't have good momentum at the beginning of your campaign, it's so hard to recover. You need 20% in the first 48 hours. So if you think you're going to be clever and like, oh, we're going to have like, announcement throughout the whole months of the campaign, and we're going to talk about, different elements we put into the game, over time, don't. Use as many ammunition as you can at the very beginning. Maybe keep a couple, because it's always good to have a few things up to your sleeve, but don't use any of the big bullets. Don't keep them for you. Just use everything so that you have the best start possible, because a good start will make the campaign overall more successful. There's a corollary to that, 20% in 48 hours. It's like halfway through, you have 50% of your funding. It sounds like stupid, but because the pace of a campaign is like a lot of money at the beginning and then very slow and then a lot of money at the end, it's not that actually clear. But we've seen that campaigns that do like 50% midway through were successful in most of the cases. So if you have like a bit of a slow start, but you manage to get to like 50% halfway through, you're on a good way. You're on track to be successful. Doesn't mean that you need to stop. You need to keep pushing. You need to keep talking about it. You need to ask your fans to keep, asking, nagging their friends about supporting you. But it's important that you know that you are on track and it should work. Game needs gameplay and demos. I'll talk about that a lot. This is very important. You can't get funded without showing your project. Like John Romero tried, he didn't succeed. So do you think you are more successful in terms of having fans than John Romero? Good luck. Next one, super important. I will just leave it there for like 2 seconds. This is my number one pet peeve on campaigns and the number one mistake people make when they do crowdfunding campaigns. Do not announce your stretch goals. It serves no purposes. It changes the people's view about the campaign. If you ask for 10,000 and the stretch goal is 20,000, the 20% psychological effect doesn't happen at 10, it happens at 20. So it's very important. You gain nothing. And lots of people do it because what they do is research other campaigns and say, oh, look, they had stretch goals. Let's do stretch goals well. And then they announce it from the beginning. But actually, the campaign you've seen is finished. Maybe they didn't announce the stretch goal at the beginning. They announced them as they were happening. Much better. Do not announce your stretch goals. And if you have a friend doing a Kickstarter campaign, the one thing you tell them is do not announce your stretch goals. Launch at the beginning of the month, finish at the beginning of the month. People have payroll. That's good. It's easier to make the decision to support something you love, and it's a bit like an emotional decision when you are not struggling to feed yourself. So it's always a bit better. I recommend to launch between Monday from Thursday because you want the first 48 hours to be during the weekdays, and you want to end between Tuesday through Friday because you want the last 48 hours to be during weekdays. It's good to do 30 to 35 days campaign. I think less than 30, you miss one of those payroll cycle. It also doesn't give the time for a campaign to kind of spread. Longer, it's very taxing. 30 days is very long when you are managing the campaign. I understand that. But I think it's also important to let the time to go to get people to talk about your project and share it and care about it and let the work happen. And sometime midway through, nothing happens. It's very frustrating. But you have a number of people who actually follow your campaign, who push a little button on Kickstarter and get an email in the last 48 hours that tell them that the campaign is about to end. It's like, oh my shit, I need to back it now, and they support you at the very end. So actually all that time when nothing happens, there's stuff in the background you can keep an eye on that actually help you for your campaign overall. Nowadays, like 2019, I think Discord is a very good tool before the campaign because you can recruit your future backers, your fans, you can engage with them, and then when the day comes, you can align them on Discord and say, now is the day, back us. It's good during the campaign to coordinate discussion for them to how are we going to recruit more backers, where can we talk about the project and have them be your little army kind of talking about you. It's good after the campaign as well to reward them, develop a little role into Discord that makes them look unique, and also inform them about the progress of the game and these sort of things. I recommend to stream during campaigns, sometimes just you talking about the project, doing AMA, showing the game, maybe showing some developments like, hey, I'm going to do animation, I'll show you my rig, and I'll show you how it all works. It's good stuff to show that you're actually real people working on the real game. It's a good tool. Kickstarter have their own Kickstarter Live tool to stream. It's horrible, but it's useful. So I'll say try it and see how it goes for you. I recommend to learn the ecosystem. I recommend people to actually be backers themselves. So anyone who tried to launch a Kickstarter campaign who would never backed a Kickstarter is a little bit counterintuitive. I think you should try that by yourself. Understand what it is to be in the shoes of a backer and understand how it feels. I've met people who actually don't like crowdfunding after they realize that being a backer was a horrible thing for them, and that make them realize they don't want to do that kind of stuff. And they were not right in terms of, they couldn't have done a good campaign because they would have the wrong tone or anything like that. So that's important. You also need to understand the lingo, the number of tools that exist. That graph I have here is from BiggerCake, biggercake.com. It's a very good website that have lots of stats on past campaigns. It's a good tool to understand, oh, I like that campaign. I think they did a very good job. Try to understand, how much money they raised at the beginning and what was the pacing of it. This is Critical Role, because I like Critical Role. It's good to spend money. Do advertising, Facebook, Google Ads, maybe. Don't spend too much money. Kickstarter gives you tools to actually track referral links and see if the money you spend actually bring money to your campaign. Ask for help. There's no such thing as competition on Kickstarter. Like all the other Kickstarter campaigns are in the same situation as you. People who back one campaign are more likely to back two campaigns. They're not going to say, oh, the other thing is better. I'm going to take my money out of yours and put it over there. There's a lot of a goodwill. People who are into crowdfunding, on the concept of crowdfunding, tend to be very benevolent and very open to look at other things and support other creators. So don't hesitate to ask for help. Those two updates are from two projects that support each other, Lunark and Chain Decos. And just like say, hey, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. And then there's the last slide. I want to talk about failing. If you fail a Kickstarter campaign, it's not the worst thing that could happen to you. You could have failed launching your game. There's a lot of lessons to learn from failing there. And you should embrace failure. Forest of Liars is a project of a friend of mine. It's beautiful. He's a concept artist. He has 40,000 followers on Twitter. And then he get funded. And we had a talk and say, is it bad? It's like, no. You have a very bad start of your campaign. Don't cancel it. Try to understand why you didn't get funded. Comes up, he didn't show enough of the gameplay. The game is beautiful, but the game was not ready to be showed in terms of gameplay. And so there are like lots of fans being disappointed. They were disappointed. But they also created like bonds to that community. They fell together. And now the game is still in development. They're looking at, maybe doing Kickstarter again, maybe doing other ways to get funded. But the project is probably better now because they failed at Kickstarter than if they had not done the Kickstarter. And that's my closing words. I think I have no time for questions. I'm so sorry. But you can see me afterwards.